The first time I seized during surgery, I thought my career was over. Instead, it became my defining moment. My name is Kennedy, and I've spent my entire life proving people wrong. Right now, I'm standing in the operating room of Boston General, my hands steady as I prepare to remove a tumor from a patient's temporal lobe. The familiar weight of surgical instruments feels like home, even as the memory of that first seizure lingers in my mind. Dr. Parker, patient's BP is stable, my assistant calls out. I nod, focused on the delicate tissue before me. The rhythmic beeping of monitors fills the silence as I work. This is where I belong, despite what my family spent years telling me. You'll never be a doctor, my mother's voice echoes from the past. Your condition makes you a liability. Think of our family's reputation. The memory makes my jaw clench, but my hands remain steady. I've performed this procedure hundreds of times. My epilepsy is controlled now, thanks to the aunt who actually bothered to help me find the right treatment when my parents shipped me off to live with her. Looking good. Sullivan, my colleague, comments from across the table. Clean margins. 3 hours later, I'm washing up when Sullivan joins me at the sink. That's what, your 5th successful temporal lobe resection this month? 6th, I correct him, unable to hide my smile. But who's counting? The board is, he says, drying his hands. Word is they're considering you for department head. I pause, letting that sink in. Department head of neurosurgery at 34. Not bad for someone my father once called damaged goods. Coffee? Sullivan asks. You can tell me all about how you're not going to call your family to brag. I laugh, but it's hollow. They stopped taking my calls years ago. Besides, I doubt they'd care unless they could somehow use it to boost their social standing. We head to the hospital cafe, our scrubs drawing the usual respectful nods from staff and visitors. Sullivan grabs our usual table while I get our coffee. Black for him, oat milk latte for me. Saw your parents in the society pages again, he mentions as I sit down. Something about a charity gala? Let me guess. Supporting children with cancer? I take a sip of my coffee. They love causes that make them look good, as long as the suffering stays at arm's length. You ever wonder if they regret it? Sending you away? They regret having a child with epilepsy. There's a difference. I check my phone. 3 new patient referrals. Besides, Aunt Mia gave me something they never could. Acceptance. Sullivan leans forward. Speaking of acceptance, that article about your innovative approach to temporal lobe surgeries is getting serious attention. The medical journal wants to feature you on the cover. Now that might actually make my mother notice me, I say with a smirk, though she'd probably just criticize my hair in the photo. My pager buzzes. Emergency consult needed. As I stand, Sullivan catches my arm. Hey, Kennedy. You know you proved them all wrong, right? You're not just successful despite your epilepsy, you're successful, period. I give him a genuine smile. Thanks, Sully. Sometimes I still need to hear that. Racing to the ER, I feel the familiar rush of purpose. Every successful surgery, every life saved, is a testament to what I've overcome. My family might have written me off, but their rejection became my motivation. The ER is chaos, standard for a Friday night. I spot my resident waiting by the nurse's station. What have we got? I ask, taking the offered tablet. Male, 42, presented with severe headaches and focal seizures. CT shows a mass in the left frontal lobe. I review the scan, already formulating a surgical plan. This is where I shine, where my past transforms into purpose. Every time I help someone with a neurological condition, I think of that scared teenage girl being told she was too broken to succeed. Book an OR, I tell the resident. We're going in tonight. As I prepare for another surgery, I catch my reflection in the window. I see what my family couldn't. Not a liability, but a force of nature. My epilepsy didn't define my limits. It showed me how to break them. The OR lights flick on, and I take my position at the head of the table. This is my revenge. Not just surviving, but thriving. Every life I save is a middle finger to those who said I couldn't. Every successful surgery proves that sometimes the best thing your family can do is underestimate you. Because that's the thing about being underestimated. It gives you one hell of a motivation to prove everyone wrong. The call came on a Tuesday morning, just as I was reviewing post-op notes in my office. I almost didn't answer the unknown number. Dr. Parker speaking. Kennedy? The voice was familiar, though I hadn't heard it in years. It's your mother. My hand froze over the patient chart. 15 years of silence, and now this? What do you want? My voice came out harder than I expected. It's Quincy. He's sick. Very sick. A pause. We need your help. Of course. They wouldn't call unless they needed something. I'm sure there are plenty of qualified neurosurgeons in New York. They say you're the best, the only one who can perform the type of surgery he needs. Her voice cracked. Please, Kennedy, he's your brother. I closed my eyes, remembering the last time I saw Quincy. He stood silent while our parents packed my bags, shipping me off to Aunt Mia's like damaged merchandise. I'll review his case files, I said finally. Have them sent to Boston General. That's all I'm promising. 2 days later, they showed up at my hospital. I was walking to my office when I saw them. My mother in her designer suit, my father looking distinguished in gray, and Quincy noticeably thinner than I remembered, leaning on a cane. Sullivan appeared at my side. Want me to tell them you're in surgery? No. I straightened my white coat. Time to face the music. My mother moved to hug me, but I stepped back. Let's take this to my office. The walk was silent, heavy with unspoken words. Inside, they took seats while I remained standing, putting my desk between us. The tumor's location is tricky, I said, pulling up Quincy's scans. Near the brainstem. Most surgeons won't touch it. But you can? Quincy asked, his voice weak. I've developed a technique for accessing tumors in this region. The success rate is high, but there are still risks. Money is no object. My father spoke up. Whatever you need. I don't want your money. The words came out sharp. I haven't wanted anything from you since I was 16. My mother's perfectly maintained facade cracked. Kennedy, please. We know we made mistakes. Mistakes? I laughed. You abandoned your daughter because she had a medical condition. You chose your reputation over your child. We thought we were protecting you, my father argued. Protecting me? By sending me away? By cutting off contact? I turned to Quincy. By letting your son pretend he didn't have a sister? Quincy looked down. I was young. I didn't understand. You were 14, not 4. You understood plenty. Sullivan knocked and entered, providing a welcome interruption. Sorry, Dr. Parker, but your 3 o'clock is here. Thank you, Dr. Vasquez. I turned back to my family. I'll need time to consider whether I'll take this case. Consider? My mother stood up. Quincy could die. Yes, he could. Just like I could have died from untreated epilepsy if Aunt Mia hadn't stepped in. I met each of their eyes. Funny how that works, isn't it? What do you want from us? My father asked, his voice tight. I want you to understand what it feels like to be at someone else's mercy, to need help from people who threw you away. I moved toward the door. I'll let you know my decision in a few days. Kennedy, Quincy called out as I opened the door. I'm sorry, for everything. I paused, hand on the doorknob. Sorry doesn't change the past, Quincy, but it might affect the future. After they left, Sullivan found me in the doctor's lounge, staring into a cold cup of coffee. You okay? They haven't changed, I said, still trying to throw money at their problems. Are you going to do it? The surgery? I looked at him. Should I? Professionally? You're his best shot at survival. He sat beside me. Personally? That's your call. But remember, whatever you decide, it needs to be something you can live with. My pager buzzed. Emergency in the OR. As I stood to leave, Sullivan caught my arm. Hey, one more thing. Whatever you decide, you're not that powerless 16-year-old anymore. You're Dr. Kennedy Parker, and you call the shots now. I nodded. feeling a plan form in my mind. They wanted my help? Fine. But this time, we'd do things my way. Heading to the OR, I pulled out my phone and made a call. Ruben, it's Kennedy. Remember that story you wanted to write about medical discrimination? I think I have something better. How do you feel about family drama, redemption, and a little karmic justice? The journalist's interest was immediate. I'm listening. Good, because this story, it's just getting started. You want them to do what? Sullivan nearly choked on his coffee as we sat in my office discussing my terms. A public apology, I repeated, scrolling through Quincy's latest test results. And I want them to fund a foundation for families affected by neurological conditions. That's bold. He leaned forward. Your parents are going to lose their minds. They lost their humanity years ago. This is just making it official. I turned my laptop around to show him an email. Ruben's already interested in covering the story. A knock at my door interrupted us. Aunt Mia stood there, her silver hair neat as always, concern etched on her face. I came as soon as I got your message, she said, pulling me into a hug. Are you sure about this? I gestured for her to sit. Remember when I had that seizure at your house? My first week there? Mia's eyes softened. Of course. You were so scared. You held me afterward. Told me I wasn't broken, just different. I swallowed hard. That's what this foundation could do for other kids. Show them they're not alone. While publicly humiliating your parents in the process. Sullivan added with a slight smirk. That's just a bonus. My phone buzzed. A text from Quincy. Can we talk? Alone? 20 minutes later, I found him in the hospital garden, looking smaller than I remembered. The golden child of the family, reduced to this. Your latest scans show the tumors growing, I said, sitting beside him. I know. He stared at his hands. I also know about your terms. Mom's having a meltdown. Shocking. Kennedy. He turned to face me. That day they sent you away. I've replayed it so many times. No, let me finish. I watched them pack your things while you were at school. Dad said it was for the best, that you'd get better care with Aunt Mia. His voice cracked. I knew it was wrong, but I was scared. Scared of standing up to them. Scared of losing their approval like you did. Scared of your sister's broken brain? The words came out bitter. Scared of becoming an outsider, too. He met my eyes. I was a coward. A memory flashed. Quincy sneaking into my room the night before, promising we'd always be close. Another broken promise in a lifetime of them. You know what the worst part was? I said. Not the rejection from Mom and Dad. I expected that. It was losing my little brother. You were my best friend, Quincy. I know. He wiped his eyes. That's why I'm going to support your terms. All of them. I stared at him. What? The public apology, the foundation, whatever you want. I'll make it happen. He grabbed my hand. Let me try to be the brother I should have been. My pager buzzed, a welcome interruption as emotions threatened to overwhelm me. I have to go. Surgery. Kennedy? He called as I stood. I really am sorry. Back in my office later that night, I called Ruben. I want to do the interview, I said, but I have conditions. Name them. We focus on the foundation, not just family drama. This needs to be about helping people, not just revenge. Even better, he said. When can we start? A knock at my door revealed Sullivan with takeout. Thought you might need dinner and moral support. Perfect timing. I put Ruben on speaker. Let's draft these terms properly. For the next hour, we outlined everything. The public apology, the foundation's structure, the media strategy. It felt surreal, turning years of pain into something productive. Your parents won't like this, Sullivan warned as we finished. They don't have to like it, they just have to do it. I checked my phone. 3 missed calls from my mother. Besides, what choice do they have? Dr. Parker? My resident appeared at the door. Mr. Parker's latest labs are concerning. His pressure's rising. I grabbed my coat. Time to make a decision. Kennedy? Sullivan called after me. Whatever you decide, make sure it's about healing, not hurting. In Quincy's room, I found my parents already there. Mother's makeup was smeared from crying, father's usual composure cracking. Well? Mother demanded. Will you help him? I looked at Quincy, pale against the hospital sheets. Then at my parents, their perfectly crafted world crumbling around them. Yes, I said finally. I'll do the surgery. But first, we're going to have a press conference, and you're going to tell the truth. All of it. You can't be serious. Father started. I am. And if you want the best neurosurgeon in Boston to save your son, you'll do exactly what I say. I headed for the door, then paused. Oh, and Mom, wear waterproof mascara to the press conference. You're going to need it. The hospital conference room buzzed with anticipation. Reporters filled every seat, cameras ready. Ruben sat in the front row, giving me a subtle nod. Are you sure about this? Sullivan whispered as we waited in the adjacent room. Watch and learn. I straightened my white coat and checked my phone. One new message from Aunt Mia. Give them hell, sweetheart. My parents entered, looking like they were heading to a funeral. Mother's designer suit couldn't hide her trembling hands. Father's jaw was clenched so tight I worried he'd crack a tooth. Remember, I said quietly, stick to the script or I walk. The press conference began with hospital administration introducing me as their leading neurosurgeon. I stepped up to the podium, feeling the weight of 15 years of silence lifting. Thank you for coming, I began. Today isn't just about medical advancement. It's about truth, accountability, and the power of second chances. The cameras clicked as I continued. Many of you know the Parker family as pillars of New York society. What you don't know is their secret, how they handled having a daughter with epilepsy. My mother flinched. Good. I'm here to announce the creation of the New Horizons Foundation, dedicated to supporting families affected by neurological conditions. And now my parents would like to say a few words. Father approached the podium first, his usual confidence nowhere to be seen. 15 years ago, he read from his prepared statement. We made a terrible mistake. When our daughter developed epilepsy, we chose our reputation over her well-being. We sent her away, cut contact, and tried to erase her from our lives. A reporter's hand shot up. Mr. Parker, are you saying you abandoned your daughter because of a medical condition? Yes, he admitted, his voice cracking. We did. Mother was next, barely holding it together. We were wrong. The shame isn't in having epilepsy. The shame is in how we treated our daughter. Ruben stood up. Mrs. Parker, how does it feel knowing you need your daughter's help now, after years of rejecting her? Mother's carefully applied makeup couldn't hide her flush. It feels deserved. The questions came rapid fire after that. Each answer stripped away another layer of my parents' carefully constructed facade. Their social standing crumbled in real time, broadcast live across multiple networks. Suddenly, my pager went off. Quincy's name flashed on the screen. Excuse me, I said, cutting through the chaos. My brother needs medical attention. Racing to Quincy's room, I found him seizing. Sullivan was already there, helping the nurses. BP's through the roof, he reported. We need to operate. Now. Get him prepped, I ordered, then turned to my parents who had followed me. Looks like your public confession gets cut short. Please. Mother grabbed my arm. Save him. I pulled away. That's what I do, Mother. I save people. Even those who didn't save me. The next hours were a blur of preparation. As the OR team got ready, Ruben caught me in the hallway. The story's blowing up, he said. Social media's on fire. Your parents are trending. Good, I replied, washing my hands. Let them feel what it's like to be exposed, vulnerable. Kennedy, he hesitated. Your brother's condition, it's not part of your plan, right? I turned to him, anger flaring. I'm a doctor. I don't play games with people's lives, even if they played games with mine. In the OR prep room, Sullivan helped me with my surgical gown. "Your hands are steady," he observed. "They always are." I looked through the window at Quincy, unconscious on the table. Even when my world isn't. "Dr. Parker," a nurse called out. "Your mother's asking if she can observe from the gallery." I paused, considering. Let her. Let her see exactly what her daughter became without her help. The OR lights blazed as I took my position. Looking up, I saw my mother in the observation room, pressing her hand against the glass. "Scalpel," I called out. As I made the first incision, I heard Sullivan's voice. "Remember what you said about healing, not hurting?" "I remember," I replied, focused on the delicate tissue before me. But sometimes healing hurts worse than the injury. The monitors beeped steadily as I worked, my technique precise. Each movement brought me closer to saving my brother's life, and closer to completing my revenge. In the gallery, my mother watched her 2 children, one fighting for life, the other fighting to save it. Both lost to her in different ways. "BP dropping," a nurse announced. "Come on, Quincy," I muttered. "Don't you dare die on my table. We're not done yet." The monitors screamed in warning, and suddenly my perfect plan didn't seem so important anymore. "He's stabilizing," I announced, watching the monitors return to normal. The entire OR seemed to exhale collectively. 8 hours later, I stepped out of surgery to find my parents and Aunt Mia in the waiting room. Mother jumped up, mascara streaked down her face. "He's alive," I said before she could speak. "The surgery was successful." Father slumped in his chair while Mother burst into fresh tears. Aunt Mia caught my eye and smiled proudly. "When can we see him?" Mother asked. "He'll be in recovery for several hours." I checked my phone, dozens of notifications from the press conference coverage. "Meanwhile, we need to discuss the foundation." "Now?" Father's head snapped up. "Our son just had brain surgery. And my childhood was destroyed by your shame. We all have our crosses to bear." I sat down across from them. "The paperwork's ready. $10 million initial funding plus annual contributions." $10 million? Father sputtered. "Would you prefer I list a price for your son's life?" I met his gaze steadily. "Because I can do that too." Aunt Mia stepped in. "Royal Poppy, just sign the papers. You've lost enough already." While they reviewed the documents with the hospital's lawyer, Sullivan brought me coffee. "Your revenge is trending on Twitter," he said, showing me his phone. "Parker family and neurological justice are going viral." "Good." I took a sip. "The more attention, the better. Every family like ours needs to see this." "Dr. Parker?" A nurse approached. "Your brother's asking for you." In recovery, Quincy looked pale but alert. The bandages around his head made him seem younger, vulnerable. "Hey, sis," he whispered. "Hey, yourself." I checked his vitals. "How's the pain?" "Worth it." He caught my hand. "I saw the news coverage. Mom and Dad looked destroyed." "That was the point." "No." He squeezed my hand. "The point was the foundation, the families you'll help. The rest is just karma." Before I could respond, Reuben appeared in the doorway. "Sorry to interrupt, but you might want to see this." He held up his tablet. My mother was on the screen, standing at a podium outside the hospital. "My daughter," she was saying, tears flowing freely, "has shown me what true strength looks like. While we rejected her for her condition, she turned it into her purpose. She became a brilliant surgeon not despite her epilepsy, but perhaps because of it. Because it taught her empathy, resilience, and determination. All the things we failed to teach her." "Is this live?" I asked Reuben. He nodded. "She called the press herself. No script, no PR team." On screen, my mother continued. "The New Horizons Foundation isn't just our daughter's demand for justice. It's her gift to families who might make the same terrible mistakes we did. We're not just funding it. We're dedicating ourselves to its mission." "Wow," Quincy whispered. "I've never seen Mom like this." "Kennedy?" Father appeared in the doorway. Your mother's making a statement. I can see that. I turned to him. Did you know about this? He shook his head. She said she needed to do something real, something unscripted. On the tablet, Mother was wrapping up. To every family struggling with neurological conditions, you're not alone. And to my daughter Kennedy, you've become everything we should have helped you be. I know sorry isn't enough, but maybe this foundation can be a start. The room fell silent except for the steady beep of Quincy's monitors. Well, Sullivan said from behind me, looks like your mother just went off script in the best possible way. My pager buzzed. Another patient needed attention. Real life didn't stop for family drama. I have to go, I told Quincy. Try to rest. In the hallway, Aunt Mia caught up with me. Your mother's statement. That wasn't part of your plan, was it? No, I admitted. That was unexpected. Maybe that's what makes it meaningful. She hugged me tight. Sometimes the best revenge is letting people realize their mistakes on their own. Later that night, reviewing the foundation paperwork in my office, I found a handwritten note from my mother. The foundation will help others, but it won't fix our past. That's a different kind of surgery, one that requires time, truth, and hope. If you'll let us, we'd like to try. Mom, Sullivan found me staring at the note. You okay? I wanted revenge, I said quietly. I wanted them to hurt like I hurt. But now you're seeing that sometimes the best revenge is success? He smiled. Or maybe it's watching people realize exactly what they threw away. My phone lit up with a text from Ruben. Foundation stories everywhere. You're changing lives already. I looked at my mother's note again, then at the foundation papers. Maybe this wasn't just about revenge anymore. Maybe it was about something bigger. Something that could heal more than just my family's wounds. Time to start the real work, I said, reaching for my pen. 3 days after his first surgery, Quincy's scans showed complications. I stared at the images, Sullivan at my side. There's still pressure building. I pointed to the screen. We need to go back in. Higher risk this time, Sullivan noted. The tissue will be more fragile. Tell me something I don't know. I rubbed my temples. Get the OR prepped. We go in tonight. In Quincy's room, Mother sat holding his hand while Father paced. They both looked up when I entered. The swelling's worse, I said, getting straight to the point. We need another surgery. But you said the first one was successful. Mother's voice shook. It was. This is a complication. It happens sometimes with brain surgery. I checked Quincy's vitals. The good news is we caught it early. The bad news? Quincy asked weakly. The bad news is it's riskier than the first surgery. The brain tissue is more sensitive now. Father stopped pacing. What are his chances? Without surgery? 0. With surgery? I met Quincy's eyes. I'll do everything I can. That's not an answer, Father snapped. It's the only answer I can give. I turned to leave, then paused. You might want to call your lawyer. Update any paperwork, just in case. In the hallway, Aunt Mia waited with coffee. You're scaring them, she said, handing me a cup. Good. They should be scared. I am. She touched my arm. Kennedy, sweetheart, are you sure you should be doing this surgery? Emotionally? Who else would you trust with your nephew's life? That's not what I meant. I know what you meant. I checked my watch. I need to prep. In the OR prep room, I was washing up when Sullivan entered. Your hands are shaking, he observed. No, they're not. But they were. Slightly. Kennedy, don't. I scrubbed harder. Just don't. Okay, then let me ask you this. Are you trembling because you're scared of losing your brother or because you're scared of saving him? I stopped scrubbing. What's that supposed to mean? It means revenge is simple. Forgiveness is complicated. Before I could respond, Quincy was wheeled past us toward the OR. He caught my eye through the window, managing a weak smile. Dr. Parker? A nurse appeared. Your parents are asking about observing again. I nodded. Let them watch. They should see what their son is going through. In the OR, everything was ready. I looked up at the observation room where my parents stood, mother clutching father's arm. Scalpel, I called out. The first incision was clean, but as we got deeper, complications arose. BP's dropping, a nurse announced. I see it, I said, hands steady despite my racing heart. Push more fluids. Heart rate's elevated, Sullivan warned. Come on, Quincy, I muttered. Work with me here. In the gallery, I heard Mother's muffled sob. For a moment, I was 16 again, hearing her cry about how my epilepsy would ruin the family name. Kennedy. Sullivan's voice cut through the memory. Focus. Right. Focus. This wasn't about the past. This was about saving my brother's life. Hours passed. The surgery was delicate, each movement crucial. Finally, the pressure began to decrease. Looking good, Sullivan confirmed. Swelling's reducing. I was about to close when the monitors screamed. He's crashing. No, 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 I worked frantically. Don't you dare, Quincy, not now. Mother's screams from the gallery pierced the OR. Father's face pressed against the glass. Starting chest compressions, a nurse called out. Come on, little brother, I pleaded, working to stabilize him. You don't get to die on my table. You don't get to make me the villain in this story. The monitors continued their awful sound. 1 minute passed. 2. Then finally a steady beep. He's back, Sullivan announced. We've got him. I finished closing, my hands still steady despite everything. When I looked up at the gallery, my parents were holding each other, crying. In the scrub room afterward, I finally let my hands shake. You did it, Sullivan said quietly. Yeah. I stripped off my surgical gown. I did. So what now? I thought about Mother's tears, Father's fear, Quincy's trust in me despite everything. Now? I took a deep breath. Now we see if healing runs in both directions. Outside, dawn was breaking over Boston. Another day, another chance to either hold on to anger or let it go. My pager buzzed. Quincy was waking up. Time to face my brother. Time to face my family. Time to face whatever came next. Hey, Rockstar. Quincy's voice was weak but clear as I entered his recovery room. Heard you had to restart my heart. Just keeping things interesting. I checked his vitals. How's the pain? Worth it. He caught my hand. You saved my life. Twice. That's what doctors do. Is that what sisters do too? Before I could answer, Mother burst into the room, Father close behind. The foundation website just launched, she announced, holding up her tablet. Look at the donations pouring in. I took the tablet, scrolling through the numbers. Over 2 million in public donations already, on top of my parents' contribution. People are sharing their stories, Father added. Families who went through similar situations? I know. I handed the tablet back. Ruben's been keeping me updated. Kennedy, Mother stepped closer. We've been thinking about the Foundation's leadership. If you're trying to take control... No, she interrupted. We want you to lead it, with Aunt Mia as co-chair. I stared at her. What? You understand these families better than anyone, Father said. You lived it, and clearly you know how to make things happen. Plus, Quincy added from his bed, you're kind of trending as a medical hero now. Sullivan appeared in the doorway. Sorry to interrupt, but Dr. Parker's needed for a consultation. Go. Quincy waved me off. Save more lives. We'll be here. In the hallway, Sullivan grinned. There's no consultation. Just thought you might need an escape route. Thanks. I leaned against the wall. Did you hear about the foundation? The whole hospital's talking about it. You're becoming quite the celebrity. That's not what I wanted, isn't it? He raised an eyebrow. You wanted to expose their shame, right? Make them face consequences? Yeah, but now they're actually trying to make amends and it's messing with your revenge narrative? Before I could respond, Aunt Mia appeared with coffee. Your mother just called me about co-chairing the foundation, she said. What do you think? I took the coffee. I think I need to show you something. I led them to my office, pulling up files on my computer. These are all the cases I've handled involving families like mine. Kids with epilepsy, tumors, neurological conditions. I scrolled through the list. Every single one faced some form of discrimination or abandonment. And you helped them all, Sullivan noted. I tried, but it's not enough. One doctor can only do so much. I turned to Aunt Mia. But a foundation? With real funding and public support? We could help hundreds of families, she finished. Maybe thousands. My pager buzzed. This time, a real consultation. Think about it, I told Aunt Mia. The foundation needs someone who understands both sides, the medical and the personal. Back in Quincy's room later that night, I found him alone, reading foundation proposals on his laptop. Shouldn't you be resting? I asked. Can't. Too excited about this. He patted the bed beside him. Come look at these programs we could fund. I sat down, scanning the screen. Support groups, medical research, family counseling. Remember when we were kids? He asked suddenly. How you used to read me bedtime stories. Before the seizures started. No, he corrected. Even after. You'd come into my room even when Mom and Dad said not to. Said I needed to understand your condition wasn't contagious. I'd forgotten that. You were scared. I was stupid. He closed the laptop. But you never gave up on me. Even now. Yeah, well, I stood up. Maybe that's the problem with being a doctor. We're not supposed to give up on people. Is that why you saved me? Doctor's oath? No. I checked his IV. I saved you because you're my brother, and maybe that still means something. The next morning, I found my parents in the hospital cafeteria with Aunt Mia, surrounded by foundation paperwork. We're thinking of naming it New Horizons, Mother said as I approached. Unless you have a better idea? I sat down, looking at their eager faces. Actually, I do. Of course you do, Father smiled. You always were the smart one. The Parker Family Foundation for Neurological Support, I said. Because this isn't about hiding anymore, is it? Mother's eyes welled up. No, it's not. Good. I pulled out my phone. Because Ruben wants to do a follow-up story about how a family's shame turned into something beautiful. Are you ready for that? Aunt Mia asked. To tell the whole story? I thought about Quincy upstairs, healing. About my parents, trying to make amends. About all the families who needed what we could offer. Yeah, I said. I think I am. Ready? Sullivan asked as we stood outside the foundation's new medical center. Almost. I adjusted my white coat, fingers brushing against the epilepsy awareness pin on my lapel. Just waiting for everyone. Quincy arrived first, walking without assistance now. Place looks amazing, sis. Wait until you see inside. I watched more cars pull up. How's the head? Better than the company's stock after Dad handed me back the CEO position. He grinned. Turns out near-death experiences change your priorities. My parents approached next, Mother carrying a stack of brochures for the center's opening. She'd traded her designer suits for something more practical. The first families are already waiting, she said, including that teenage girl you told us about. Sarah. I nodded. Her parents tried to pull her out of school when she was diagnosed with epilepsy. Not anymore, Father added. Our legal team made sure of that. Aunt Mia joined us, clipboard in hand. Press is ready when you are, Kennedy. Taking a deep breath, I stepped up to the podium. Cameras flashed as I faced the crowd. Welcome to the Parker Family Foundation's first neurological support center, I began. But before we cut any ribbons, I want you to meet someone. I gestured to Sarah, who walked up nervously, her parents following. 3 months ago, Sarah had her first seizure in math class. Her parents, scared and uninformed, wanted to hide her away. I met my mother's eyes. I know that fear. My family lived it. Sarah's mother spoke up. But the foundation helped us understand. Showed us we weren't alone. That's why we're here today, I continued. This center isn't just about medical treatment. It's about support, education, and acceptance. Ruben raised his hand from the press section. Dr. Parker, how does it feel seeing your family actively involved in the foundation? I looked at my parents, who now spent their social capital advocating for neurological awareness instead of hiding from it. It feels like healing, I answered honestly. On all sides. After the ceremony, I gave tours of the facility. Mother led support group orientations while father handled administrative meetings. Quincy worked the crowd, his natural charm now serving a better purpose. In the children's wing, I found Sarah exploring the specially designed playroom. Cool place, she said. Better than hiding in my room. I had a room like that once, I told her. Until someone taught me I deserved better. I felt Aunt Mia's hand on my shoulder. And now you're teaching others the same thing. Later, in my new office overlooking the center's garden, Sullivan brought coffee. Quite a change from plotting revenge, he observed. Turns out revenge isn't as satisfying as actual change. I picked up a framed photo from my desk. Me and Quincy in his hospital room, both smiling despite everything. A knock at the door revealed my mother. Kennedy, there's a family in the consultation room. Their daughter just had her first seizure. I'll be right there. I stood up, straightening my coat. Want me to come? She asked hesitantly. I paused, then nodded. Yeah, show them what acceptance looks like. In the consultation room, I saw my past reflected in the scared parents and their confused daughter. But this time, the story could have a different ending. I'm Dr. Parker, I said, sitting down. And this is my mother. We have quite a story to tell you. Mother reached for my hand as we began to share our journey, not just of medical treatment, but of family, forgiveness, and finding purpose in pain. Later that night, as the center quieted down, I found Quincy in the garden. Remember when you said sorry wasn't enough? He asked. Yeah. Was this enough? He gestured at the building behind us. Did we finally get it right? I thought about Sarah and her parents, about all the families who would find help here, about my own family's transformation. It's a start, I said. A good one. My pager buzzed. Emergency surgery needed. Some things never changed. Duty calls, I told Quincy. Try not to need any more brain surgery while I'm gone. No promises. He hugged me. Go be amazing, sis. Walking through the center's halls, I passed the wall of donor names. My family's among them. Not as a symbol of social status now, but as a commitment to change. My phone lit up with a text from Aunt Mia. Proud of you, sweetheart. You turned pain into purpose. In the hospital wing, I prepared for surgery, my hands steady as always. The revenge I'd planned had transformed into something better. Not just healing bodies, but healing hearts, including my own. Ready, Dr. Parker? Sullivan asked, joining me in the OR. Ready, I replied, knowing he meant more than just the surgery. The OR lights blazed to life, and I began another day of saving lives, this time with my whole family behind me.
Life has a funny way of throwing you curveballs when you least expect it. I'm Andrea, a PR manager who spent more time in boardrooms than in the dating scene. At 35, my life was a testament to hard work and late nights, not romantic dinners or weekend getaways. But then Michael walked into my life, or more accurately, into my project meeting. Michael was the kind of guy you noticed the moment he entered a room, not because he tried to be the center of attention, but because of his quiet confidence. He was representing our new client, and from our first handshake, I felt a spark that was hard to ignore. We spent weeks working closely, And I found myself looking forward to our meetings more for the chance to chat with him than the actual work. It was crazy. Here I was, a woman who prided herself on her independence, getting butterflies over a business partner. One evening, as we were wrapping up, I made a spur-of-the-moment decision. "Hey, Michael, fancy grabbing dinner?" My treat. "We can celebrate the project's progress." It was a lame excuse, but it was all I could come up with. Michael raised an eyebrow, a small smile playing on his lips. "Dinner, huh? Sure, why not? But let's make it fair, my treat next time." Dinner was a mix of work talk and personal stories. It was easy, comfortable. As the night drew to a close, I knew I didn't want this to be just another work dinner. Gathering all my courage, I blurted out, "Michael, I'm going to be straight with you. I like you. More than just a business partner." There was a moment of silence. Michael looked surprised, then thoughtful. "Andrea, I'm not sure what to say. I like you too, but I've got some baggage. My ex-wife, Laura, let's just say she left a mark. I'm not sure I'm ready to jump into something new." His honesty caught me off guard. "Look, I get it. I'm not asking for a fairy tale here. How about we just see where things go? No pressure." Michael nodded. "All right, Andrea. Let's take it slow." That dinner marked the beginning of something special. We continued to meet, first under the guise of work, then openly as something more. It was refreshing, being with someone who understood the demands of a career yet made time for the little moments. One evening, as we were walking back to our cars after a spontaneous movie date, Michael stopped and looked at me. "Andrea, these past few months have been amazing. I didn't think I could feel this way again after Laura. I want this, us." I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through me. "Me too, Michael. I'm all in." Building a life with Michael felt like we were laying bricks for a foundation that was meant to last. After the initial awkwardness of transitioning from work partners to life partners, we found our rhythm. We moved into my place, a cozy 2-bedroom house that now felt more like a home with Michael's stuff scattered around. One lazy Sunday morning, as we sat with our coffees in the living room, Michael looked around and let out a content sigh. "You know, Andrea, I never thought I'd feel at home so quickly anywhere after, well, you know." I grinned, nudging him with my foot. "Yeah, I know. But hey, look at us now. Making a home out of a house filled with nothing but work files and takeout menus." He chuckled, picking up a stray sock from the floor. "Speaking of which, we really need to work on our domestic skills. I can't even remember the last time we cooked." "Hey, speak for yourself." "I make a mean cereal," I shot back, laughing. It wasn't all smooth sailing, though. Balancing our demanding jobs with our personal life was a juggling act. We'd often find ourselves working late, only to come home to each other, sometimes too exhausted to even talk. One evening, after a particularly grueling day, I flopped down next to Michael on the couch, burying my face in the cushions. "I'm beat. If I see one more email, I'm going to scream." Michael, laptop still open on his lap, glanced at me and closed it with a snap. "That's it. We're taking a break this weekend. No work, no emails. Just you, me, and maybe a little adventure." I lifted my head, intrigued. "An adventure, huh? What did you have in mind?" He wiggled his eyebrows. "How about a road trip? Just hit the road and see where we end up." The idea of just driving off with no particular destination sounded perfect. "I'm in. But let's make one rule, no talking about work. Deal?" "Deal," he agreed, and we shook on it. That weekend, we did just that. We drove to a small beach town a few hours away, spending our days exploring and our nights in a quaint bed and breakfast. It was refreshing, being away from the hustle of our daily lives, reminding us of the simple pleasures we often overlooked. Back home, as we settled into our routine again, it was clear that the little getaway had recharged us. Our conversations shifted from deadlines and meetings to plans for the future, our future. One evening, as we were cleaning up after a rare attempt at cooking dinner together, Michael turned to me, a serious look on his face. "Andrea, I've been thinking. We've been doing great, you know, building a life together. I want to make it official." I froze, a soapy dish in hand. "Official? You mean, like..." "Yeah, like marriage. I want you to be my wife, Andrea. I know it's sudden, but I've never been sure about anything." The dish almost slipped from my hands. "Michael, are you serious?" "As a heart attack," he said, his eyes locking with mine. I put the dish down, water and soap suds forgotten, and walked over to him. Yes, I'll marry you." Life with Michael was like a dream until Laura, his ex-wife, decided she wasn't done with him yet. At first, her calls were rare, a nuisance we brushed off. But then, they picked up frequency, each one more demanding than the last. One evening, while Michael and I were trying to enjoy a quiet night in, his phone rang. The caller ID flashed Laura's name, and he sighed heavily before answering. "Laura, what is it now?" I could only hear his side of the conversation, but his furrowed brow told me it was the same old song and dance. After he hung up, he tossed his phone on the couch, frustration written all over his face. "She needs help moving some stuff this weekend. Can you believe that?" I frowned, my patience wearing thin. "Michael, why does she always turn to you for help? She's got friends, hasn't she?" He shrugged, a helpless look in his eyes. "I don't know, Andrea. I guess old habits die hard?" This wasn't just about old habits, though. Laura's calls became more personal, and she even started reaching out to me, offering unsolicited advice on how to keep Michael happy. The first time she called, I was taken aback. "Andrea, it's Laura. I just thought I'd give you a heads up. Michael loves his steak medium rare, not medium. And he hates peas. Thought you should know." I was seething, but I kept my cool. "Thanks, Laura. I'll keep that in mind," I said through gritted teeth, before hanging up. It was clear Laura was playing games, trying to wedge herself between us. Her audacity peaked when she started inviting Michael over for dinner for old time's sake. That was the last straw for me. One night, after another one of Laura's invitations, I confronted Michael. "This has to stop, Michael. It's us now, not you and her. Why can't she respect that?" Michael ran his hands through his hair, looking exhausted. I know. It's just complicated." "Complicated? What's so complicated about telling your ex-wife to back off?" He didn't have an answer, and the silence between us grew heavy. It was clear we needed to address the Laura situation head-on if we were going to move forward. The next time Laura called, I answered Michael's phone. "Laura, listen. You need to stop calling. Michael is with me now. You had your chance, and you blew it." There was a pause on the other end before Laura's voice came through, sharp as a knife. "Oh, I see. So you're answering his phone now? You think you've won him over?" "This isn't over, honey." I clenched my teeth, anger boiling inside me. "No, Laura. It is over. You need to move on and let us live our lives." We hung up, but the damage was done. Laura's intrusions had cast a shadow over our relationship, stirring doubts and insecurities we'd worked hard to overcome. It was a chilly Thursday evening when Laura's latest stunt unfolded. She called Michael, her voice shaky, claiming she was in dire need of help, something about a leaking pipe in her house. Michael looked at me, phone still pressed to his ear, uncertainty in his eyes. "She says it's an emergency, Andrea. I feel like we should go, but I want us to handle this together. Are you okay with that?" I was tired of her games, but I nodded. "Let's do this. But we're setting boundaries today, Michael. This ends now." Armed with a resolve to end Laura's manipulations, we drove to her place. The air between us was tense, a mix of anxiety and determination. As we approached her front door, I could feel my heart pounding. Michael rang the bell, and we waited. The door swung open, and there stood Laura. She wore a revealing outfit and held a glass of wine, a stark contrast to the emergency she had described. Michael's face went from concern to furious in a second. "Laura, what the hell is this? You said it was an emergency." Laura's confident demeanor faltered as she looked from Michael to me, her plan unraveling. I thought we could talk, Michael. Just the two of us. I didn't expect you to bring her." I stepped forward, my patience worn thin. "Enough, Laura. Your little games end now. We're not doing this anymore. Michael is with me. You need to respect that and move on." Laura's eyes flashed with anger. "Move on? How can I move on when you've taken everything from me? Michael was my husband, and you—" Michael interrupted, his voice firm. "I was your husband, Laura. Past tense. And I left because of your actions, not Andrea's. You need to accept that and stop this nonsense." The ride home was quiet, a time for reflection on the events that had unfolded. When we finally spoke, it was with a sense of relief and a renewed commitment to our relationship. "Michael, we can't let anyone or anything come between us again. We need to be a team, always." He nodded, his grip on the steering wheel tightening. "You're right, Andrea. I promise, from now on, it's you and me against the world. No more ex-wife drama." Despite the steps we took to protect ourselves, Laura's vendetta against us escalated to a public spectacle that neither Michael nor I could have anticipated. It happened on a night that was supposed to be a celebration of a significant milestone in my career. We were at a downtown restaurant, surrounded by colleagues and friends, the mood light and festive. As we raised our glasses for a toast, the sound of the restaurant door slamming open turned every head in the room. Laura stormed in, her eyes wild with anger, zeroing in on Michael and me. Without hesitation, she began yelling, her voice cutting through the chatter of the room like a knife. "Michael, how could you do this to me? And you," she spat, turning her venomous gaze towards me, "you home wrecker." The room fell silent, all eyes on us. I felt my face flush with a mix of embarrassment and rage. Michael stood up, his body tense. "Laura, get out of here. You're making a scene over nothing. It's over between us, and it's time you accepted that." But Laura wasn't deterred. She continued, her words laced with bitterness. "You think you can just replace me? I was his wife. And you," she hissed, pointing a finger at me, "you're nothing but a thief." I stood up, my patience exhausted. "Laura, enough. You've crossed a line. We've done nothing wrong. You need to leave, now, before we call the police." Her laughter was cold and mocking. "Call the police? For what? Telling the truth? Everyone here should know what kind of people you really are." The tension in the air was palpable. My colleagues and friends looked on, some in shock, others with looks of sympathy. It was a humiliating situation, being accused and insulted in front of everyone important to me. Seeing that his words had no effect, Michael grabbed his phone. "That's it. I'm calling them. You've gone too far, Laura." As he dialed, Laura seemed to realize the seriousness of the situation. Her defiance wavered for a moment, but then she turned on her heel and stormed out, leaving a trail of shocked silence in her wake. The aftermath of her outburst was a mixture of awkward apologies and whispered conversations. I tried to smooth over the disruption, but the evening was ruined. As we drove home, the weight of the public humiliation settled heavily on my shoulders. "Michael, I can't believe she did that. In front of everyone." My voice was thick with unshed tears. Michael reached over, squeezing my hand. "Andrea, I'm so sorry. I never wanted any of this to affect you like it has. We'll get through this, I promise. Laura's actions tonight, they've crossed a line. We'll make sure she can't do anything like this again." His words were meant to comfort, but the reality was hard to bear. Laura's relentless pursuit to disrupt our lives had reached a new low, and the thought of what she might do next was a constant shadow over our happiness. After the confrontation with Laura, Michael and I thought we had finally put an end to her meddling. Life returned to a semblance of normalcy, and for a brief moment, we allowed ourselves to believe that the drama was behind us. However, Laura wasn't done yet, and the next phase of her vendetta against us was about to unfold in a way we never anticipated. It started one morning as I was heading out to work. I found my car covered in what looked like eggs and flour. It was a mess, and the stench was unbearable. Furious, I stormed back inside to grab Michael. "Michael, you won't believe this. Come look at what's been done to my car," I shouted, my voice shaking with rage. He followed me outside, and the look on his face when he saw the car mirrored my own anger. "What the? Who would do this?" "We both know who's behind this," I said, barely containing my fury. "It's Laura. She's escalating things because we stood up to her." Michael ran his hands through his hair, frustration etched on his face. "This is getting out of hand, Andrea. I'm going to call her right now and put an end to this." "No, Michael. Calling her won't solve anything. She wants to provoke us. We need to think this through and not play into her hands," I countered, trying to think clearly despite the anger boiling inside me. Reluctantly, Michael agreed, and we decided to take the car to get cleaned, hoping that would be the end of it. But deep down, we both knew it was just the beginning. A few days later, things took a turn for the worse. I started receiving anonymous, threatening letters at work, each one more disturbing than the last. I showed them to Michael, my hands trembling as I handed them over. "Look at these, Michael. They're getting sent to my office now. This is serious. We can't just ignore it." Michael's face darkened as he read through the letters. "This is harassment. We need to go to the police. She's not just trying to scare us anymore, she's threatening your safety." The trip to the police station was a blur. We filed a report, but without concrete proof that Laura was behind the letters, there wasn't much they could do. Feeling helpless and frustrated, we returned home, trying to come up with a plan. That night, we sat in silence, the weight of the situation pressing down on us. Michael finally broke the silence, his voice low and determined. "Andrea, I won't let her hurt you. We'll install security cameras around the house. If she tries anything else, we'll have it on record." The installation of the security cameras felt like a small victory, but the sense of security it brought was fleeting. Laura's next move was something we hadn't anticipated, and it hit closer to home than any of us could have imagined. It was a regular weekday when Michael received a call at work from our neighbor, informing us that someone had been lurking around our house. My heart sank as I listened to Michael relay the message. "Andrea, our neighbor just called. Someone's been seen snooping around our house. I'm coming home now. We need to check the footage from the cameras." The rest of the day passed in a haze of worry and fear. When Michael arrived home, we reviewed the footage together, and there she was, Laura, unmistakable in her defiance, caught on camera trespassing on our property. Seeing her there, invading our private space, was the last straw. "That's it, Michael. We have proof now. We're taking this to the police, and we're pressing charges." Michael nodded, his jaw set in determination. "You're right. It ends now. She's gone too far." Our trip back to the police station, this time armed with evidence, marked the turning point in our battle against Laura. We were no longer just defending ourselves, we were taking the fight to her, ready to do whatever it took to reclaim our peace and security. After months of chaos, it all came crashing down for Laura. The day we learned about her gambling debts and her twisted plan to drag us into her mess was the day the tables turned. Michael and I were at the police station, a place that had become all too familiar, when the detective called us into his office. "Sit down, folks. We've got some news about Laura," he began, shuffling papers on his desk. "Turns out, she's knee-deep in debt. Banks are on her tail, and she's been hitting the casinos hard." Michael's expression hardened. So, what? She thought she could shake us down to cover her losses? Looks like it, the detective replied. She admitted to wanting to get back at you, Michael. Plan A was to win you back. When that tanked, she switched gears to Plan B, make your life hell, hoping you'd pay up to make it stop. I felt a mix of anger and disbelief. And she thought this would work? That we'd just hand over cash to get rid of her? The detective leaned back in his chair. Desperation makes people do crazy things. But we've got her confession, and we're pressing charges. Harassment, threats, attempted blackmail. She's looking at a hefty fine, at the very least. The court day was something out of a movie. Laura, looking defeated, her lawyer whispering last-minute advice. Michael and I, standing firm, ready to see this through. When it was our turn to speak, Michael laid it all out, the stress, the fear, the constant looking over our shoulders. She tried to tear us apart, to use our past against us. But we're not her ATM. We're not fixing her mess. The judge nodded, scribbling notes. When Laura tried to play the sympathy card, the judge wasn't having it. You exploited personal relationships for financial gain, Miss Stewart. Your actions have consequences. In the end, the gavel came down hard. After reviewing the evidence and hearing both sides, it's clear that Ms. Stewart has engaged in a pattern of harassment against Mr. and Mrs. Johnson. Such behavior cannot be tolerated. Laura's face paled as the judge continued. Ms. Stewart, you are hereby ordered to cease all contact with Mr. and Mrs. Johnson. Any violation of this order will result in immediate arrest. Furthermore, you are to pay restitution for the damages caused, including the emotional distress inflicted. As the judge pronounced the verdict, a wave of relief washed over me. Michael squeezed my hand, a silent acknowledgement of our hard-fought victory. With the legal battles behind us and Laura no longer a shadow over our lives, Michael and I could finally breathe easy. Our home, once a battleground of stress and tension, was now filled with laughter and plans for the future. One evening, as we were curled up on the sofa with some old movie playing in the background, Michael turned to me, a soft smile on his lips. You know, Andrea, I've been thinking a lot about us lately. About everything we've been through. I nestled closer, intrigued. Oh yeah? And what have you concluded from all that thinking? He chuckled, his arm tightening around me. That we're pretty damn unstoppable together. We've weathered a storm that would have sunk most ships. Makes me think we can handle just about anything life throws at us. I couldn't help but smile at his analogy. I like the sound of that. So, Captain, where do we sail next on this unstoppable journey of ours? Michael's gaze turned thoughtful, his eyes locking with mine. Well, First Mate Andrea, I was thinking, maybe it's time we expand the crew? It took me a second to catch his drift, but when I did, my heart skipped a beat. Are you saying what I think you're saying? If you think I'm saying we should start trying for a baby, then yes, you're spot on, he said, his voice filled with a mix of excitement and a hint of nervousness. The idea of starting a family had crossed my mind more than once, especially in the quiet moments when I'd daydream about our future. Michael, that's the best idea you've ever had. I'm all in. As the weeks turned into months, our excitement only grew. We started preparing in earnest, turning one of the spare rooms into a nursery, reading every parenting book we could get our hands on, and imagining our lives with a little one in tow. One day, as I was painting a mural on the nursery wall, Michael came in, a mock-stern look on his face. I leave you alone for 1 hour, and you turn into Picasso. Should I be worried? I stepped back, admiring my handiwork. Only if you don't like elephants. But seriously, Michael, can you believe this? We're really doing this. He wrapped his arms around me from behind, resting his chin on my shoulder. I can. It feels right, Andrea. Like this is exactly where we're supposed to be. And it did. Despite the roller coaster of emotions, the fears, and the excitement, it felt like we were right on track. Our journey had been anything but ordinary, but then again, we were anything but an ordinary couple. I remember the day Clara walked into our lives like it was yesterday. Dad had been all work and no play since Mom passed away in that accident. I was too young to really remember her, but the pictures around the house and the way Dad talked about her made me miss her like crazy. Anyway, it was a cold Tuesday evening when Dad said we needed to talk. I figured it might be about another move, or maybe he was finally going to get me that puppy I kept asking for. Boy, was I off the mark. Chloe, Dad started, his voice serious, which was my cue to really pay attention. I've met someone. My heart sank. Not because I didn't want him to be happy, but because the thought of someone trying to replace Mom felt like a betrayal. But I was just a kid, what did I know about adult stuff like loneliness and moving on? She's beautiful, kind, and I really think you'll like her, he continued, trying to sound upbeat. The doorbell rang, cutting our conversation short. Dad went to answer it, and in came Clara. Even to my young eyes, she was stunning, like those ladies in the fashion magazines my nanny sometimes flipped through. But it was her smile that caught me off guard, it didn't quite reach her eyes. Chloe, this is Clara. Dad introduced us, his voice full of hope. Hi. I muttered, unsure of what else to say. Hello, Chloe. You're just as adorable as your father described, Clara said, her voice sweet but somehow distant. Dinner that night was an awkward affair. Dad was trying too hard, Clara was politely distant, and I just wanted to disappear. The conversation was mostly between Dad and Clara, with me throwing in a yeah or no when absolutely necessary. So, Chloe, Clara eventually turned her attention to me, her tone a bit too sugary. Your dad tells me you love animals. Yeah, I guess, I replied, not really in the mood to chat. We'll have to see about getting you involved in some animal charity work. It's good for young girls to learn responsibility, she said, the suggestion sounding more like a decree. Dad seemed pleased with the idea, but I wasn't fooled. I could tell when adults were just saying things to make conversation. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of forced smiles and too many please and thank yous. After Clara left, Dad was eager to know what I thought about her. Well, she's nice, I said, which was kid code for I haven't decided if I like her yet, but I don't want to upset you. Dad laughed, a sound I hadn't heard much of since Mom died. Give her a chance, Chloe. Clara's been through a lot too. She understands loss like we do. In the days that followed, Clara's presence became more pronounced. Her things started appearing around the house, and her visits became more frequent. Each time, she tried to engage with me, offering to do my hair or take me shopping, but it all felt too structured, too calculated. There was no warmth, no genuine connection. It was as if she was playing a role rather than genuinely trying to be a part of our family. Dad, why does she always look at me like that? I finally asked one evening, after Clara had left from one of her increasingly regular visits. Like what, Chloe? Dad looked puzzled, his forehead creasing. Like she's studying me, figuring out her next move, I said, struggling to put my feelings into words. Dad sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. Clara's just trying to find her way, to connect with you. It's all new to her, being a stepmom. But I didn't ask for a stepmom, I blurted out, the words harsher than I intended. Dad's face softened, and he pulled me into a hug. I know, kiddo. But I asked for someone to share our lives, to bring in some happiness we've been missing. Just give it some time, for me? Ever since I can remember, animals were my thing. Dogs, cats, even the squirrels in the backyard, I loved them all. So, when I hit 10, I got this idea in my head about volunteering at the local animal shelter. It seemed like the perfect plan. I'd get to be around animals, and maybe even make a difference. But there was one big roadblock, Clara. One evening, I decided to bite the bullet and ask her. Dad was away, as usual, so it was just her and me at dinner. I pushed my peas around my plate, working up the courage. Clara, can I talk to you about something? I started, my voice a bit shaky. She looked up from her phone, which was a miracle in itself. Sure, what's up? I took a deep breath. I want to volunteer at the animal shelter. It's something I'm really passionate about. Clara put her phone down, which meant she was actually listening. Volunteer, huh? And what makes you think you're ready for that kind of commitment? I was taken aback by her tone. It wasn't supportive, it was more like she was challenging me. I love animals, and I want to help. I think I can do it. She gave me this look, the kind that made me feel like I was 3 feet tall instead of 10. Volunteering is hard work, Chloe. It's not just playing with puppies and kittens all day. You have to be willing to get your hands dirty. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah, I get it. I'm not afraid of hard work, I said, though her tone made me nervous. Clara smiled, but it wasn't warm. It was more like she had an idea, and I wasn't sure I'd like it. Alright, if you're serious about this, I have a proposal. How about you start by taking on more responsibilities around the house? Show me you can handle that, and we'll talk about the shelter. I nodded eagerly, willing to agree to just about anything at that point. Okay, what kind of responsibilities? For starters, you can help out more with cleaning. Take care of your own room, the living room, and the kitchen. If you manage that for a few months, we'll see about the shelter. It sounded like a lot, but I was determined. Deal. I'll start tomorrow. Good, Clara said, picking her phone back up. Remember, it's not just about starting, it's about sticking with it. We'll see how you do. The next few months were brutal. I was scrubbing, dusting, and vacuuming every day after school. It was exhausting, and more than once, I wanted to give up. But the thought of volunteering at the shelter kept me going. I imagined all the animals I'd be helping, and it gave me the strength to keep at it. Finally, after what felt like forever, I approached Clara again. I was tired, my hands were rough from all the cleaning, but I was proud of what I'd accomplished. Clara, I've been doing everything you asked. Can we talk about the shelter now? She looked me over, as if assessing whether I'd really done enough. You've been keeping up with the chores, I'll give you that. But Chloe, there's more to volunteering than just hard work. It's also about maturity, about commitment. Are you sure you're ready for that? Her words felt like a slap in the face. After all I'd done, she was still questioning me? Yes, I'm ready. I've proven I can handle responsibility. Please, I just want a chance to make a difference. Clara sighed, tapping her fingers on the table. All right, Chloe. I'll make you a deal. Keep up with your chores, and add cooking dinner twice a week to the list. If you can manage that for another few months, we'll talk about the shelter again. It was moving the goalposts, and I knew it. But what choice did I have? Okay, I'll do it. But you have to promise we'll really talk about the shelter next time. We will, Clara said, though her voice didn't exactly inspire confidence. So, I added chef to my list of household duties, learning to cook beyond just mac and cheese. It was hard, and more than once, dinner was barely edible. But I kept at it, determined to get to that shelter one day. By the time I hit 12, I'd been playing housemaid for 2 years straight. The promise of volunteering at the animal shelter was the carrot dangling in front of me, keeping me going. I marked the calendar, counting down days like some kind of prisoner waiting for release. Finally, the day came. I approached Clara with a mix of hope and dread in my gut. Clara, I've done everything you asked. Can I start volunteering at the shelter now? My voice wobbled a bit, showing more nerves than I wanted. Clara was lounging on the sofa, flipping through a magazine like she hadn't a care in the world. She glanced up, her expression unreadable. Oh, Chloe. I was wondering when you'd bring this up again. A lump formed in my throat. Her tone wasn't promising. You said if I did all the chores and cooked, we could talk about it. I've done more than that. She sighed, setting her magazine aside with a dramatic flair. True, you've been quite helpful around here. But, Chloe, things change. You're still so young, and now I think it's best if you wait until you're 16. I felt like she'd slapped me. 16? But you promised. Anger bubbled up, raw and hot. Life isn't fair, Chloe. You'll learn that. In the meantime, there's a new deal. Keep up with your current chores, and start preparing meals for the whole family. Consider it part of your training. Training for what? To be Cinderella? I shot back, unable to hide my frustration. Clara's eyes narrowed. Watch your tone, young lady. This is, for your own good. Learning to manage a household is a valuable skill. I stormed off, feeling betrayed and used. The next few months, I kept my head down, doing what was asked without complaint. But the fire inside me didn't die down, it simmered, fueled by every unfair demand Clara placed on me. One day, I accidentally overheard a conversation that blew everything wide open. Clara was on the phone, laughing about how she'd tricked me into doing all her chores while still taking Dad's money for the housekeeper and cook. He hasn't got a clue. And that naive little Chloe is working her fingers to the bone for nothing. Clara gloated. My heart raced, anger turning to ice. I confronted her as soon as she hung up. I heard you. You've been lying to me and Dad. Taking the money and making me do all the work. Why? My voice was steady, fueled by a cold fury. Clara's face went from surprise to smug in seconds. Oh, Chloe. Always so dramatic. It's not like you had anything better to do. Besides, it's high time you learned the world doesn't revolve around you. That's it. I'm telling Dad. I turned on my heel, ready to expose her deceit. The moment Dad walked through the door after his latest trip, I was on him like a shadow. I had rehearsed my speech a dozen times, but when it came down to it, the words just spilled out in a messy torrent. Dad, we need to talk, now. It's about Clara. I blurted out before he could even set down his suitcase. He looked taken aback, but nodded, leading me into the living room, away from the prying ears of Clara, who was conspicuously absent, probably out at one of her endless social events. What's going on, Chloe? Dad's voice was laced with concern, the lines on his face deepening. It's Clara. She's been lying to us, taking the money you send for the housekeeper and cook and making me do all the work instead. And she promised me something she never planned to keep. I rushed, the anger and frustration I'd bottled up pouring out. Dad's expression hardened. I'll handle this, he said, a steely note in his voice I rarely heard. The confrontation that ensued later that evening was like a live wire sparking in the house. Voices raised, words thrown like daggers, and through it all, I stood by the staircase, listening as my world seemed to crumble. Clara's response was venomous, denying everything at first, but eventually turning the argument around, making it about how ungrateful and spoiled I was. Dad wasn't having any of it. The fight ended with Clara storming out, slamming the door behind her, leaving a silence that was almost worse than the shouting. After that, things went from bad to unbearable. Clara's attitude towards me shifted into something cold and dismissive. She would come home late, stinking of alcohol, and find fault in everything. My cooking, which I had painstakingly learned to improve, was never up to her standards. What is this slop? You expect me to eat this? She'd sneer, pushing the plate away. My attempts at keeping the house clean were met with similar disdain. You call this clean? Do it again, she'd command, pointing at a spot on the floor so tiny I'd need a microscope to see it. But the final straw was when I mentioned my dream of becoming a doctor. I had saved that conversation for a time when I thought she might be in a good mood. I was wrong. A doctor? With what money? You think we're made of cash? Clara exploded, her face twisted in rage. Dad, overhearing this, intervened, and another heated argument broke out. She's not spending your money, Clara. It's my decision, and I support Chloe's dream, he said, his voice firm. Their relationship hit rock bottom after that. Clara wouldn't speak to me directly anymore. She communicated through sticky notes left around the house, each one a command for some chore or another. Walking home from school, I never expected the scene that greeted me. The house was buzzing with noise, music blaring, and strangers milling around with drinks in their hands. Confusion and irritation battled inside me as I pushed through the crowd, looking for Clara. I found her in the living room, the center of attention, dancing carelessly with some guy I'd never seen before. "Clara, what's going on here?" I shouted over the music, my frustration peaking. She stopped dancing, turned to me with a drink in one hand, and laughed. It was a cold, joyless sound. "Oh, Chloe, dear. Haven't you heard? Your father's plane crashed." "He's gone," she said, her words casual, as if she was talking about the weather. My heart stopped. "What? That's not funny, Clara." She smirked, taking a sip of her drink. "I wish I was joking, darling. But it's true. And now, everything here," she gestured around the lavish room, "is mine." The room spun, and I could barely stand. "This can't be happening," I whispered, disbelief and grief washing over me. Clara's next words were like a slap in the face. "You should start packing, Chloe. There's no place for you here anymore. No one to protect you," she sneered, turning back to her party. I stumbled out of the room, my mind a whirlwind of shock and sorrow. I couldn't process it, Dad gone, and Clara, she was heartless. I locked myself in my room, picking up the phone with trembling hands. I dialed the number of Dad's old friend, Mr. Jacobs, who'd been a regular before Clara took over our lives. "Mr. Jacobs, it's Chloe," I managed to say, fighting back tears. "Chloe? What's wrong?" His voice was filled with concern. Through sobs, I told him everything. He was silent for a moment before speaking, his tone grave. "I'll be there. We'll sort this out together, Chloe." I didn't know what to do except follow his advice. I packed a bag with my most necessary belongings and documents, anything I thought I might need. As I left my room, suitcase in hand, Clara's laughter followed me out of the house. It was a sound full of victory and malice. I waited outside, feeling more alone than ever, until Mr. Jacobs pulled up. He didn't say anything, just opened the passenger door for me, his face set in a grim line. Sitting across from Mr. Jacobs in the dimly lit cafe, I felt like I was in some kind of bad dream. The noise around us faded into the background as he confirmed the devastating news about Dad. My world crumbled right there, tears streaming down my face as I tried to wrap my head around it all. "Chloe, I know this is hard. I'm so sorry," Mr. Jacobs said, his voice gentle, trying to offer some comfort. I could barely speak through my sobs. How did this happen?" My voice was a whisper, choked with grief. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for what he had to say next. "There's more you need to know. Your father came to see me not long before the accident. He had suspicions about Clara, about her loyalty. He changed his will, Chloe." I looked up, wiping my eyes. "Changed his will? What do you mean?" "He left everything to you, Chloe. The house, his assets, everything. He wanted to make sure you were taken care of," Mr. Jacobs explained, his eyes showing a mix of sadness and determination. The news hit me like a ton of bricks. Dad knew? And he tried to protect me, even from afar. "What do we do now?" I asked, feeling a mix of anger and resolve. "We take back what's yours. I suggest we call the police and go to the house. I'll be with you every step of the way," Mr. Jacobs said, already reaching for his phone. When we arrived at the house, the police were already there, waiting. My heart pounded as I stepped out of the car, the reality of the situation setting in. Mr. Jacobs was by my side as we approached the entrance, where Clara stood, surrounded by the remnants of her party, a look of shock on her face. "This is my house now, Clara. You need to leave," I said, my voice stronger than I felt, fueled by the injustice of it all. Clara laughed, a hollow sound, trying to mask her fear. You think you can just kick me out? This is my home too. The will says otherwise. You have no claim here. It's time for you and your guests to go, Mr. Jacobs interjected, his tone leaving no room for argument. Clara's face went pale, her eyes darting to the police officers. She knew she had lost. Without another word, she gathered her things, her guests following suit, the reality of the situation dawning on them as well. After they left, the silence of the house was deafening. It didn't feel like a victory, it felt like the beginning of a long road to healing. Mr. Jacobs helped me organize a small, respectful farewell for Dad, something that honored the man he was. I also started a book of memory, filling it with photos, stories, and little notes about Dad. It became my way of keeping him close, of remembering the good times and not letting the pain of his loss overshadow the love he had for me. Years flew by, and life had its way of moving forward. I graduated high school, with marks good enough to get me into medical college. Dad would have been proud. Alongside my studies, I started volunteering at the local animal shelter, just like I always dreamed. It was hard work but fulfilling, giving me a sense of purpose I'd longed for. Then, out of nowhere, Clara showed up at my doorstep. She looked so different, almost unrecognizable. Time and, I guessed, a hard life had taken their toll on her once flawless appearance. Chloe, please, you have to help me, she pleaded, tears streaming down her face. I was taken aback, not just by her sudden appearance, but by the desperation in her voice. Help you? What's going on? It's my health, Chloe. I'm sick, really sick. I need money for treatment, a lot of money, she sobbed, the story pouring out of her. Something didn't sit right with me. After everything that had happened, her showing up like this and asking for money was suspicious. If you're really sick, show me the documents, the diagnosis. I'm studying medicine, remember? I can understand it. At that, Clara's demeanor shifted. The tears stopped as if someone had turned off a tap, and her face hardened. You think I'm lying? You ungrateful little. I cut her off. No. I just need proof. If you're really sick, I want to help, but not without seeing the facts first. Clara's anger flared. I come here, swallowing my pride, and you accuse me of lying? I don't have to prove anything to you. That was the moment I knew for sure. She was trying to play me, just like old times. Clara, I think it's best if you leave. I won't be giving you any money without proof. And honestly, after everything, you shouldn't have come here asking for it. Her face twisted with rage, but she must have realized that making a scene wouldn't get her anywhere, especially not with me standing firm. Without another word, but with a glare that could freeze hell over, she turned and left. Life's taken a sweet turn. Here I am, living in this big, beautiful house with a yard that looks like something out of a magazine. The evenings are my favorite, just me wandering the garden or floating in the pool, thinking about how far I've come. Medical school's tough, no joke, but it's where I'm meant to be. The dream of becoming a doctor, it's closer every day. And volunteering? That's where my heart's at. I decided to put a chunk of the inheritance Dad left me into something meaningful, helping homeless animals. It's like coming full circle, back to that little girl who just wanted to make a difference. I've met some incredible folks at the shelter. We're a tight-knit crew, passionate about what we do. On the rare free weekends, we hang out, share stories, or just chill. It's a good life, a peaceful one. Clara? Haven't heard much since that day she showed up, begging for money. Rumor has it she went through some botched plastic surgery. Guess that was the treatment she needed. Can't say I'm surprised. She always did care more about appearances than what was underneath. Chloe, you coming to the fundraiser next weekend? That's Sam, one of my closest pals from the shelter, breaking into my thoughts. Yeah, wouldn't miss it. We've got a good thing going, raising money and awareness. It feels right, you know? Sam grinned. Absolutely. It's amazing what we're doing. And hey, your garden here? Perfect spot for a little pre-fundraiser gathering. I laughed. You just want another excuse to dive into the pool. Guilty as charged, Sam admitted with a chuckle. But seriously, Chloe, it's awesome what you're doing. Your dad would be proud. That hit home, warming me from the inside out. Thanks, Sam. That means a lot. He inspired me, in more ways than one. Now, it's about paying it forward, making a difference where I can. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the garden, I felt a sense of contentment. This was my path, carved out through trials and triumphs. And Clara? Well, she was just a shadow of the past, a lesson learned. I'm going to tell you a story, my story, and it's all about dreams, love, and one heck of a roller coaster ride with my mother-in-law. My name's Emma, and I'm a hairstylist. Been one for about 6 years now. I love what I do, shaping, cutting, and coloring. It's like every head is a canvas, and I'm the artist. But my dream? That's to own a beauty salon. Not just any salon, though. I want a place where people come not just to look good but to feel good too. I met Tom at a friend's party. He was different, kind, funny, and had this calm about him that just drew me in. He's 10 years older, works at a bank, and, honestly, he's been my rock since day one. We hit it off, but took our sweet time getting serious. Marriage wasn't a race for us, it was more about enjoying the journey together. Before we tied the knot, I got to meet his parents. His dad was a gem, easy to talk to, and always had interesting stories. But his mom, Linda? That's a whole different story. From the get-go, I could tell she wasn't keen on me. I tried, though, really tried to get on her good side. One day, after a particularly long day at the salon, I came home to Tom. I needed to vent, and he was always my sounding board. Tom, your mom's driving me nuts. Every visit turns into a lecture on how I'm supposedly neglecting you for my career. Tom, bless him, took my hand and said, Emma, love, I've told her to cut it out. You and your dreams are just as important as anything else. If she can't see that, it's her problem, not ours. His words were a bomb, but it didn't change the fact that Linda was relentless. It was like she had a playbook on how to be the mother-in-law from hell. But here's the thing, I wasn't about to let her dictate how I live my life or how Tom and I run our future marriage. This was our journey, and I was determined to make my dream a reality, Linda's approval or not. The salon was busy one afternoon, the buzz of dryers and chatter filling the air, when my phone buzzed. It was Tom. Hey, babe, how's the day going? Swamped. You know how it is before the weekend. What's up? Just checking in. Mom called again. Wants us over for dinner this Sunday. I sighed, already dreading it. Can't wait, I replied, the sarcasm heavy in my voice. Tom chuckled. Hang in there. It's just a dinner. And who knows? Maybe this time will be different. Yeah, and maybe I'll become a blonde overnight, I quipped. We both laughed, but deep down, I knew what I was up against. Linda had made it clear she wasn't my biggest fan. But this was my life, and I was not about to let anyone, not even my future mother-in-law, stand in the way of my dreams. Our wedding day was something out of a fairy tale, minus the magic and with a touch of real-life drama, courtesy of Linda, my mother-in-law. Tom and I decided on a simple ceremony. Nothing too fancy, just close friends and family, good food, and great music. We wanted it to be a celebration of us, our love, and the life we were about to start together. In the weeks leading up to the wedding, the stress was real. Between dress fittings, menu tastings, and making sure everything was just perfect, I barely had time to breathe. Tom was a rock, dealing with most of the logistics and doing his best to keep me sane. One evening, we were finalizing the guest list when Linda called. Tom answered, and I could tell by the way his face dropped that the conversation was going south fast. Yeah, Mom, Emma's here. We're just going over the guest list. What's up? Tom's tone was patient, but I saw his jaw clench. Linda's voice was a tinny squawk from the phone. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was unmistakable. Tom sighed, rubbing his forehead. Mom, we've talked about this. Emma's friends are her choice. Yes, even Jessie. No, I don't think it's inappropriate. Look, we want everyone we love there, okay? I bit my lip, knowing Jessie's inclusion was a sticking point. Jessie had been my best friend since high school, known for her, let's say, colorful personality and even more colorful language. Linda had met her once and declared her unfit for polite company. Tom hung up, pinching the bridge of his nose. She's on about Jessie again. Thinks it'll be a disaster to have her at the wedding. I rolled my eyes. Because Jessie's going to start a mosh pit during the vows, right? Tom cracked a smile. You know, that might liven things up a bit. The wedding day arrived, and it was beautiful. The ceremony went off without a hitch. Jessie behaved herself, mostly, and everyone had a blast. But at the reception, Linda couldn't resist stirring the pot. She cornered me while Tom was off greeting relatives. Emma, dear, I must say, everything is quite nice. Though I'm surprised you went with such an eclectic mix of guests. I forced a smile, trying to keep the peace. We wanted everyone important to us here, Linda. It means a lot that they could all come. Linda hummed, eyeing Jessie, who was tearing up the dance floor. Yes, well, I suppose it's too late to change anything now. Just remember, dear, you're a part of our family now. It's important to maintain a certain standard. The warning was clear, and I nodded, excusing myself as politely as I could. Tom found me a few moments later, his brow furrowed. Everything okay? You look like you just went 10 rounds with a blender. I sighed, leaning into his side. Your mom. She's just a lot. Tom kissed the top of my head, wrapping an arm around my waist. I know. But hey, we're married now. It's you and me against the world, remember? I smiled, the tension easing a bit. Yeah. You and me. The rest of the night went smoothly, and despite Linda's best efforts, nothing could dampen our spirits. We danced, laughed, and celebrated our love surrounded by those who mattered most. A couple of months into our marriage, I figured it was time to extend an olive branch to Linda. Despite the wedding drama, I wanted to make peace, or at least try. I decided to bake a pie, apple, Linda's favorite, or so Tom claimed. I'm no chef, but I can follow a recipe like a champ when I put my mind to it. The kitchen was a disaster by the time I finished, flour everywhere, apple peels on the floor, but the pie? It looked pretty darn good, if I do say so myself. Tom wandered in, eyebrows raised at the mess. Babe, did a flour bomb go off in here? I laughed, wiping my hands on a dish towel. Very funny. I made a pie for your mom. Thought it might be nice to, try to get on her good side. Tom looked surprised, then touched. Emma, that's really nice of you. But are you sure? She can be, well, I shrugged, a bit nervous, but determined. Yeah, I know. But I gotta try, right? So, we set off to Linda's with the pie in tow. I was anxious, rehearsing what to say in my head. We rang the doorbell, and Linda answered, her expression neutral until she saw the pie. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Emma, Tom, what a surprise. And what's this? I held out the pie, trying to sound confident. I made you a pie, Linda. Apple, your favorite. We sat in the living room, the pie on the coffee table between us, an unspoken battleground. Linda finally spoke, her voice cool. It was very thoughtful of you, Emma. I must say, I'm surprised. You finding the time to bake, what with all your work. Her tone had that familiar sting, but I was determined to keep things light. Yeah, well, I wanted to do something nice. Thought it might be a good way to, spend some time together. Linda nodded, but there was a skepticism in her eyes that made my stomach twist. She excused herself to get plates and came back with a knife. She cut into the pie and paused. Then, without a word, she scooped up the pie and dumped it in the trash. My mouth fell open, shock and anger battling for dominance. Tom stood up, his voice tight. "Mom, what the hell?" Linda faced us, her expression cold. That pie was spoiled. I could smell it. We don't eat spoiled food in this house. I was speechless, the effort and hope I'd put into that pie trashed in seconds. Tom was furious, his usual calm demeanor gone. "Emma made that for you. At least you could have pretended to appreciate it." Linda's eyes flashed. "I will not pretend for the sake of politeness. It's better to be honest. Emma, I appreciate the gesture, but let's not pretend this changes anything." I stood, my hands shaking. "You know what, Linda? I tried. God knows why, but I tried. Come on, Tom. Let's go." Tom didn't hesitate, following me out the door, leaving Linda standing in her pristine, cold living room. The car ride home was silent at first, both of us simmering with anger and hurt. Finally, Tom broke the silence. "Emma, I'm so sorry. I had no idea she'd..." I cut him off, my voice weary. "It's not your fault. I thought maybe we could start over." Guess I was wrong. Tom reached over, taking my hand. "She's the one who's wrong, not you. We won't let her ruin what we have, okay?" After the pie fiasco, life went back to its usual rhythm. Work was busy, which was good for my dream of opening my own salon, but it also meant long hours away from Tom. We made it work, though, grabbing those moments together whenever we could. Then, something weird started happening. One morning, I found a bouquet of flowers on our doorstep. No card, no nothing. Just a bunch of roses, their petals bright against the morning dew. I thought Tom was trying to be romantic, so I brought them inside, smiling like an idiot. "Tom, you sneaky thing, trying to surprise me with flowers?" I called out, finding him in the kitchen. He looked up, confusion written all over his face. "What flowers?" "The ones at the front door." "Don't play dumb with me," I said, putting the vase on the table. Tom came over, examining the bouquet. "Emma, I didn't buy these. I thought maybe they were from one of your clients or something." I frowned, the mystery of the flowers suddenly not so romantic. "But there's no card. Who would send me flowers anonymously?" We shrugged it off, figuring it was a one-time thing. But then it happened again. And again. Every few days, a new bouquet appeared. Always beautiful, always anonymous. It was flattering, but also kind of creepy. One evening, we were lounging on the couch when there was a knock at the door. Another delivery, another bouquet. This time, I felt a chill run down my spine. Tom saw my discomfort and wrapped an arm around me. "This is getting weird, right? It's not just me?" "No, it's definitely weird. I'll ask around at work, see if anyone's pulling a prank or something," Tom said, but we both knew it didn't feel like a prank. The turning point came when Linda visited one Sunday afternoon. She walked in, her eyes immediately landing on the latest bouquet adorning the living room. "And who are these from? Another secret admirer?" she asked, her voice dripping with disapproval. The way Linda looked at me then, with a mix of suspicion and something else, set off alarm bells in my head. "Why? You know something about this, Linda?" Linda scoffed, turning away. "Why would I know anything about your flowers? I just find it curious, that's all. Flowers from a secret admirer, and Tom knows nothing about it. Makes you wonder." The implication was clear, and I felt my temper flare. "What's that supposed to mean? You think I'm, what? Cheating on Tom? With who, the florist?" Tom stood up, placing himself between me and his mother. "Okay, that's enough. Emma's not cheating, And these flowers are just some weird thing we're trying to figure out. Let's not turn this into something it's not. Linda huffed, clearly not convinced. Well, I just think it's very odd. In my day, if a woman received flowers from another man, it meant something. But what do I know? The conversation ended there, but the seed of doubt Linda planted lingered like a bad smell. We decided to install a security camera, hoping to catch the mysterious flower deliverer in the act. Days passed, and just when we thought it might have stopped, another bouquet arrived. We rushed to check the footage, hearts pounding. The screen flickered to life, showing the early morning hours. A figure approached, hooded and unrecognizable, leaving the flowers on our doorstep before quickly walking away. The quality was too grainy to make out a face, but the build, it looked familiar. Tom and I watched in silence, the same thought crossing our minds. Could it really be Linda? Was she going to such lengths just to stir trouble between us? After catching the hooded figure on our new security camera, Tom and I were on edge. The flowers were one thing, but the thought of Linda, or anyone, really, sneaking around our house was downright creepy. We needed more evidence before confronting anyone, especially since accusing your mother of such bizarre behavior wasn't exactly an everyday conversation. Let's keep an eye on the footage for a few more days, Tom suggested, his brows furrowed in concern. If it's really Mom, we need to be sure. Plus, we need to figure out what to say. This is just nuts. I nodded, feeling a mix of anxiety and anger. Yeah, but what's the end game here? If it is Linda, what's she trying to do? Scare me? Break us up? Tom sighed, running a hand through his hair. I don't know, Em. But we'll handle it, together. Okay? Okay, I agreed, though the pit in my stomach grew heavier with each passing day. The flowers kept coming, and each bouquet felt more like a taunt than the last. We reviewed the camera footage daily, but the hooded figure was careful, never revealing their face. It was maddening. Then, one afternoon, I was at work when I got a call from Tom. He sounded more excited than I'd heard him in days. Emma, you're not going to believe this. I was reviewing the footage from this morning, and guess who showed up? Who? I asked, my heart racing. Mom. Clear as day. She took off her hood this time. Looked right at the camera, can you believe it? I took a deep breath, trying to process the information. What do we do now? Confront her? Yeah, it's time. I'll call her, ask her to come over. We need answers, Emma. The conversation with Linda was going to be difficult, to say the least. I dreaded it, but the mystery of the flowers had to be resolved. When Linda arrived that evening, the air was thick with tension. Tom and I sat her down, the latest bouquet sitting between us like evidence in a trial. Mom, we need to talk about these, Tom started, gesturing to the flowers. Linda looked from the bouquet to us, her expression unreadable. What about them? We know you've been sending them, Linda. We saw you on the camera, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. For a moment, Linda was silent, then she let out a sigh. All right, I sent them. But you have to understand, I was just trying to protect my son. Tom and I exchanged bewildered glances. Protect me? From what? Tom asked, confusion lacing his words. Linda's gaze shifted, avoiding eye contact. From making a mistake. I thought if Emma received flowers from another man, it would. I don't know, open your eyes. My jaw dropped. You thought I'd cheat on Tom? And that sending flowers would prove it? It was foolish, I see that now, Linda admitted, though her tone lacked genuine remorse. I just don't want you to end up like me, trapped in a loveless marriage. Tom's voice rose, a rare edge of anger cutting through. So you sabotage our relationship? How does that make any sense? The silence that followed was heavy. Tom and I were speechless, trying to digest the twisted logic that had driven Linda to such extremes. Finally, Tom spoke, his voice calm but firm. Mom, what you did was wrong. You don't get to decide who's right for me. Emma and I are happy, and nothing you do will change that. The conversation escalated quickly from there. In the end, the air between us and Linda colder than ever. Linda's actions had crossed a line, one that couldn't easily be erased. So, Tom and I made a tough decision. We stopped communicating with her, cutting off ties to protect our peace. It was a hard choice, especially for Tom, but necessary. So there we were, me and Tom, with a little one on the way. I was over the moon, floating on cloud 9, and thought, hey, why not share the joy with Linda? Maybe, just maybe, this news would be the bridge to mend things, right? I called her, heart thumping like it's trying to break free. Linda, you're gonna be a grandma. I spilled it, all giddy-like. There's a pause, and then, really? Oh, Emma, that's wonderful. She sounded genuinely chuffed, which had me thinking, alright, maybe things are turning a corner. She's keen on celebrating, so we chose this cozy little spot downtown, nothing too flashy. The nights went smooth, food's great, and Linda's played nice, which is a rare sight. I was sipping on my apple juice, staying on the straight and narrow for the bub, when out of nowhere, the room started to spin. I thought, what in the heck? 'Cause all I've had is juice. I said it out loud. I feel dizzy, like I've knocked back a few. Hoping it's just me being paranoid. But Linda, oh, she jumps on it like a cat on a mouse. Drinking while pregnant? Emma, that's just reckless. Tom's face fell. He grabbed my glass, sniffed it, and his eyes go wide. This ain't just juice. We called the waiter over, asked him to check the cameras, 'cause something's fishy. The footage? Clear as day. Linda spiked something into my drink while we were out. The row that followed was epic. Tom was fuming, I turned rather red, and Linda? She tried to spin some yarn about teaching me a lesson. That's it. I told Tom. I can't do this no more. She's out. Tom nodded, all serious. Yeah, no more. This is the last straw. We cut ties, for real this time. No more chances, no more, let's fix things. It was tough on Tom, but we had our little one to think about. We were done playing Linda's twisted games. Life's been a roller coaster, you know? Right when my little boy Jamie came into this world, we had to say goodbye to my father-in-law. It was a mess of happy tears for Jamie and sad ones for George. Then, out of nowhere, Linda, who's always been like a thorn in my side, calls up. She's all soft and sniffly, wanting to see Jamie. Guess losing George hit her hard. I thought, why not? Maybe it's time to smooth things over, for Jamie's sake. Alright, Linda. Let's try and make things right, I told her, figuring maybe we could finally get past our rough history. First time Linda met Jamie, it was like watching ice melt. She was all over him with toys and cuddles. Made me think, maybe, just maybe, we could be something like a normal family. She even asked to see Jamie more often, and I said yes, hoping for the best. But man, was I wrong. A few weeks down the line, I'm out with Jamie, and we bump into Linda. Figured I'd dash into a store real quick and asked her to watch Jamie. Came back, and my heart just dropped. No Linda, no Jamie, no nothing. Panic hit me like a truck. I tried calling her, no answer. I called Tom, nearly choking on my words. Tom, she's gone. Took Jamie. I just can't find them. Tom was all calm and business. Hang tight, Emma. I'm coming. Get the cops over, now. Before I could even think straight, Linda's back, minus Jamie. She hits me with, "You ain't fit to be a mom." I gave him to someone better. My world stopped. But then the cops showed, thanks to someone who saw the whole mess. They got Linda spewing nonsense and blaming me for everything under the sun. Turns out, Jamie was just a couple yards over, safe and sound. Relief washed over me, but so did anger. The cops took Linda away, and when Tom showed up, we just held on to Jamie like he was our lifeline. After all that, it was clear as day, we had to cut Linda out for good. No more chances. It hurt, sure, especially for Tom, but we had Jamie to think about. After all the chaos, it was clear Linda needed help, more than we could give. Her actions, especially with Jamie, were way off, scaring the life out of us. So, me and Tom pushed hard for her to get checked out by professionals. It wasn't easy, convincing her or ourselves, but we knew it was the only way forward. The doctors did their thing, and the verdict came back: Linda was struggling with some serious mental health issues. Hearing it was a mixed bag of relief and sadness. Relief because, finally, there was an explanation for all the madness, and sadness because, well, it was Linda at the end of the day. They recommended a place where she could get the right treatment, a spot where she'd be looked after properly. It was tough, seeing her go there, but it gave us a bit of peace, knowing she was in good hands. With Linda getting help, things took another unexpected turn. Turns out, she received an inheritance from her late husband, and with her not being able to handle her affairs, it all went to Tom. "Emma, we can use this to do something good, something right." "What about your dream, the salon you've always wanted?" he said, his eyes all lit up with the idea. We found a spot, not too big, cozy-like, and started the ball rolling on setting up the salon. It was hard work, picking out everything from the chairs to the mirrors, but man, was it exciting. We named it New Beginnings, because that's what it was for us. A fresh start, a chance to build new memories, to leave the past where it belonged. Tom joked that we should have called it From Chaos Comes Beauty, but New Beginnings stuck. Looking back, it's crazy to think how far we've come. From the brink of falling apart to standing strong, together, with a future we're building with our own hands. Linda's situation, as tough as it was, led us here, to this moment of peace and promise. I was sorting through another stack of papers in the cramped, musty office of the Government Property Agency, feeling like I was drowning in legal jargon and endless forms. My dad had left me his shares in a big-shot company, and here I was, trying to make sense of what that meant for me, a 27-year-old who'd rather be anywhere but here. The clerk on the other side of the desk was a guy named Alex, a young man with a tired look that seemed to say he'd seen too many people like me. He shuffled through my paperwork, his eyes not quite meeting mine. "So, Melissa, you're the lucky one inheriting a fortune, huh?" His voice was flat, but I detected a hint of something else. Was it curiosity? Lucky? Feels more like I've inherited a headache. I tried to smile, but it felt forced. I have no clue about half of these documents. Alex looked up, a genuine smile cracking his weary demeanor. "Yeah, it's a mess, isn't it? But don't worry, I'll walk you through it. We'll get it sorted." As we went through the documents, his patience was surprising. Most clerks just wanted you out the door, but Alex took his time explaining each form, what it meant, and what I needed to do. It was refreshing. "Thanks, Alex. I didn't expect to find someone who actually cares in a place like this," I said, once we were done. He shrugged, the corners of his mouth turning up slightly. "We're not all robots yet. Besides, it's a nice break from the usual. Helping someone's a good feeling, you know?" I laughed, the sound brighter than anything I'd felt since stepping into this bureaucratic maze. "I guess I owe you one then. Coffee?" "My treat, as a thank you for not letting me drown in paperwork." "Coffee sounds great, but it's my treat." "You've got enough on your plate with all this inheritance stuff," Alex countered, standing up and gathering the now neatly stacked documents. Walking out of the office felt different. The burden of paperwork was still there, but lighter somehow. Alex led the way to a nearby cafe, a small, cozy place that felt worlds away from the sterile government office. As we sat down with our coffee, the conversation flowed easily. We talked about everything and nothing: work, hobbies, how life can throw curveballs when you least expect it. "You know, I never thought I'd meet someone like you in a place like that." Someone, real, I found myself saying. Alex raised an eyebrow, a smirk playing on his lips. Someone real? What, you thought I was a government-issued robot designed to make your life miserable? I chuckled, shaking my head. No, it's just, everyone seems so caught up in their own stuff. It's rare to find someone who listens, who actually sees you, you know? He nodded, taking a sip of his coffee. I get it. Life's too short to be anything but real, especially with people. We're all just trying to figure it out, one day at a time. Our story didn't start with love at first sight or grand gestures. It started with shared smiles, genuine kindness, and a cup of coffee. And sometimes, that's all it takes to turn a regular day into the beginning of the rest of your life. After that day at the cafe, things between me and Alex took off faster than I could have imagined. It wasn't long before we were seeing each other outside of all that legal and paperwork mess. One evening, sitting on my old, comfy couch with takeout boxes scattered around, Alex brought up the idea that would change everything. Hey, I've been thinking. He started, a bit hesitant, which wasn't like him at all. He was always so full of confidence, his ideas bold and out there. With your inheritance and my knowledge of the market, we could start something on our own. Something big. I paused, a piece of pizza halfway to my mouth. Start something? Like what, a business? The idea seemed crazy. Sure, I had money now, but business was a whole different game. Yeah, a business. Hear me out. He leaned forward, his eyes lighting up the way they always did when he was excited about something. We both know the agricultural sector is booming. What if we dive into that? Start a wholesale warehouse for spare parts or something. It's in demand, and with your capital and my connections, we could really make a mark. I set my pizza down, intrigued despite myself. But I don't know the first thing about running a business, Alex. And what about your job? He waved his hand dismissively. My job's a dead end, you know that. And you're smart, you'll learn. We'll learn together. His confidence was infectious, but I was still hesitant. Alex, it's a huge risk. What if it doesn't work out? I could lose everything. The fear of making a monumental mistake was gnawing at me. But what if it does work out? His hand found mine across the couch, giving it a reassuring squeeze. You won't be alone in this. We're in it together, every step of the way. Plus, your mom's been bugging you about investing that money wisely, right? Here's our chance to do something wise and big. I couldn't help but laugh. You've got an answer for everything, don't you? His enthusiasm was hard to resist. Okay, let's say we do this. We're going to need a solid plan. And I mean solid, Alex. No winging it. Of course. He was practically bouncing with excitement now. I'll draft something up. We'll go over it together, tweak it, make sure it's foolproof. And just like that, our joint venture began. It was a whirlwind of planning, meetings with lawyers, to draw up a partnership agreement, and endless research. My head was spinning most days, but seeing Alex so passionate and dedicated was all the reassurance I needed. Before we got married, Alex insisted we sign a prenuptial agreement. It's just practical, he said one night as we were going over some business plans. In case things go south, we both know where we stand. Everything split in half, clean and simple. I nodded, understanding his point, but wanting to add my own condition. Alright, I get it. But I want something in there too. If one of us cheats and that leads to divorce, the cheater loses their share in the business. He looked at me, surprised, but then nodded. Fair enough. I love you, and I'm not going to cheat on you. So, yeah, let's add it. It was a tough conversation, but it felt right. Setting clear rules felt like we were laying a strong foundation, not just for our business, but for our relationship too. The day we signed the lease for our warehouse space was surreal. Standing there, looking at the empty building that would soon be bustling with our business, I felt a mix of terror and exhilaration. We're really doing this, aren't we? I said, more to myself than to Alex. He came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. We're doing this. And it's going to be amazing. You and me, we're going to build something great here. I leaned back into his embrace, allowing myself to believe in the dream we were building. It wasn't just about the business, it was about us, taking on the world together. Little did I know, the challenges ahead would test us in ways I never expected. But in that moment, all I felt was hope and the thrill of starting something new with the man I loved. The buzz of our warehouse was like music to my ears, the shelves stacked with parts, orders coming in and going out. Alex and I, we were riding the high of our success. Our little venture into the world of agricultural spare parts was booming, profits climbing higher than either of us had dared to dream. It was a rush, seeing something we built from the ground up flourish like this. But with growth came growing pains. We need more hands on deck, I said one evening, poring over orders and invoices that seemed to multiply by the hour. I can't keep up with the paperwork on top of everything else. Alex, ever the cautious one, frowned at the suggestion. I don't know, babe. Hiring more people means trusting outsiders with our baby. Can't have just anyone poking around our finances and legal stuff. I got where he was coming from, but something had to give. So, what, you want me to do it all? I'm already swamped as it is. He looked at me, a mix of apology and determination in his eyes. I was thinking, maybe you could take some courses? Get certified in accounting and legal management? It'd keep things tight, just between us. The thought of going back to school on top of running a business felt overwhelming, to say the least. Seriously? When am I supposed to find the time for that? At night? Weekends? He suggested, as if it were that simple. Look, I know it's a lot, but we've got to protect what we've built. You're brilliant, babe. You'll ace it in no time. So, that's what I did. By day, I was the co-owner of a thriving business, and by night, a student once again. It was exhausting, juggling books with balance sheets, but I was determined to keep our dream alive. As the business expanded, so did my responsibilities. I became the backbone of our operations paperwork maze, handling everything from document management to accounting and legal issues. Alex took charge of the finances, contract negotiations, and steering the company's growth, which meant he was on the road a lot, leaving me to hold down the fort. One night, with Alex away on a trip and me buried under a mountain of work, I couldn't help but feel the weight of it all. This isn't what I signed up for, I muttered to myself, staring at the computer screen long after the office had gone dark. The phone rang, breaking the silence. It was Alex, checking in from wherever his meetings had taken him. Hey, how's my superstar manager doing? I sighed, rubbing my tired eyes. Drowning in paperwork, if you must know. This is insane, Alex. I can barely keep my head above water. There was a pause on the line. I'm sorry, babe. I wish I could be here to help. But you're killing it, you know that? I couldn't do this without you. His words were meant to comfort, but they felt like a reminder of the chasm between us, growing wider with every business trip he took. I miss you, Alex. And I miss us not being so consumed by all of this. I know, I miss you too. But think about where this is going to take us. We're building our future, one invoice at a time, he tried to joke. I forced a laugh, but it sounded hollow even to my own ears. Yeah, one invoice at a time. Just make sure you come back to me in one piece, okay? I promise. And hey, when I get back, let's take a day off. Just you and me, no business talk. Deal? Deal, I agreed, clinging to that small promise of normalcy in the midst of our success-driven chaos. Hanging up, I turned back to my work, the screen blurring slightly as I blinked back tears. This was the dream, wasn't it? So why did it feel like something was slipping through my fingers? Life in the fast lane of our booming business took its toll on me in more ways than one. The late nights, the constant stress, and the never-ending pile of work left little time for anything else, especially taking care of myself. I didn't even notice the changes at first, but as the months rolled by, the mirror reflected a version of me I hardly recognized. I was heavier, more worn out, and the sparkle that once lit up my eyes seemed to have dimmed. It wasn't just my reflection that had changed, Alex's behavior towards me had shifted too. He started working longer hours, making excuses to stay at the office or go on trips without me. Just tying up some loose ends, he'd say, or, "This trip is really important for the business." I tried to brush off the nagging feeling that something was off, telling myself it was all in my head. Then came the party with his business partners. I was actually looking forward to it, a chance to step away from the work and maybe even reconnect with Alex amidst our hectic schedules. But when I mentioned it, his reaction caught me off guard. "Look, I don't think it's a good idea for you to come," he said, not meeting my eye. I was stunned. What? Why not? I thought we were both invited. He sighed, a look of discomfort crossing his face. "It's just, the wives of the partners, they're all, very polished. And you've changed. I don't want you to feel out of place. It might be better if I go alone." His words hit me like a slap in the face. Changed? Out of place? Since when did appearances matter more to him than us being together? "So, what, you're ashamed of me now?" The hurt was evident in my voice, mixing with a rising anger. "It's not like that," he said quickly, "but the damage was done. I'm just thinking about what's best for the business. That's all." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This wasn't the Alex I fell in love with, the one who used to tell me I was beautiful no matter what. Now, here he was, embarrassed by me, by the very real signs of the life and work we had shared. "If that's how you see me, then go. Enjoy your party," I spat out, the words tasting bitter. He tried to say something else, probably to backtrack or smooth things over, but I was done listening. I turned away, feeling a mix of heartbreak and disgust. That night, as he went off to mingle and laugh with our polished associates, I stayed home, crying over the unspoken cracks in our marriage that had finally, painfully, come to light. The tension in our house grew thicker with each passing day, turning from a place of love and shared dreams into a battlefield. The party incident had left a gaping wound in our relationship, and things only went downhill from there. Alex, the man who once looked at me like I was the only woman in the world, started finding fault in everything I did, especially about my looks. One evening, as I was trying to unwind after another grueling day at work, he walked in, his face set in that now familiar look of disapproval. "Here," he said, tossing a brochure onto the coffee table. It was a membership for a local fitness club. "Thought you could use this. Might help with, he gestured vaguely at me. I stared at the brochure, then up at him, feeling a mix of anger and hurt. "What's that supposed to mean?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "It means maybe it's time to do something about how you look. You're not exactly the woman I married anymore," he shot back, his words like daggers. I tried to shrug off his cruel comment, to show him that his words didn't hurt me, but they did. Deeply. "Alex, you know how swamped I am with work. When am I supposed to find the time to go to a gym?" "That's just an excuse," he retorted, his patience thinning. "If you cared enough, you'd make the time. But no, you'd rather just sit around and what? Do the job that keeps our business running? The job you're too busy to help with, because you're always out networking?" I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. He scoffed, turning away. "I'm getting tired of your attitude. It's not just about the work. You've let yourself go, and it's embarrassing." I was speechless, the hurt turning into a deep-seated anger. How could he say such things? How could the man I loved, the man I built a life with, be so callous? But it didn't stop there. His comments became more frequent, more hurtful. He called me lazy, fat, a shadow of the woman he'd married. Each word chipped away at my self-esteem, at my very sense of self. I began to avoid mirrors, to shy away from his touch, feeling unworthy and unlovable. And then, there were the nights he didn't come home. The first time it happened, I was worried sick. By the third time, I was numb. When I dared to ask where he'd been, he'd snap. "It's none of your business. Just focus on what you're supposed to do." In the depth of my turmoil, I reached a point where the weight of silence became unbearable. My voice, shaky but determined, finally broke the silence one evening. "I can't live like this anymore," I admitted to Alex, my heart pounding against my chest. "We need to talk about divorce, about how we're going to handle the business." The idea of splitting everything we built together was daunting, but necessary for my peace. Alex's reaction was a mix of rage and disbelief. "You want to walk away now?" he thundered. "After all I've put into this? You think you're entitled to half?" His words, sharp and cutting, were meant to intimidate, to make me second-guess my worth. "I built this company. You're nothing without me," he sneered, his words echoing off the walls, a painful reminder of how far we'd drifted apart. His threats of dragging me through a legal nightmare didn't deter me as he thought they would. Instead, they crystallized my resolve. "It's not just about the business, Alex," I countered, my voice steadier than I felt. "It's about respect, something that's been missing for far too long." Later, washing my face with cold water of the bathroom, I stumbled upon Alex's phone, abandoned and buzzing with a new message. Driven by a sudden impulse, I picked it up, and what I found shattered the remnants of my denial. Messages from another woman, filled with intimacy and vulgarity, painted a vivid picture of betrayal. My heart sank as I scrolled through plans for a getaway, a trip meant for two, all behind my back. With every message I read, a part of the old me died, and a new resolve took its place. I didn't confront Alex with my discovery. Instead, I carefully documented everything, a silent promise to myself to fight for what was rightfully mine. This wasn't just about getting even, it was about claiming my dignity, my independence. With a heart heavy yet resolute, I knew what I had to do. The discovery of Alex's betrayal wasn't just a personal blow, it was a wake-up call to protect what I had worked so tirelessly for. So, I went to our office, a place that once symbolized our shared dreams, now a battlefield where I had to secure my future. First, I meticulously reviewed every document, every account associated with our business. It was crucial to understand the full scope of what we had built together, and what was at stake. Discovering the extent of Alex's deceit, including the car he bought for his mistress, only fueled my determination. I gathered every piece of evidence, made copies, and prepared myself for the next step. Armed with the documents, I sought out the best lawyer I could find, someone known for their integrity and tenacity. "I need to file for divorce," I told the lawyer, my voice steady but my hands betraying my nervousness. "And I intend to fight for what's rightfully mine in the business we built together." The lawyer, a seasoned professional with a keen sense of justice, listened intently as I laid out my case. After reviewing the prenuptial agreement and the evidence of infidelity, he looked at me with a reassuring calmness. "Given the circumstances and the evidence you've provided, you have a strong case. We'll do everything in our power to ensure you come out of this with what you deserve." The legal battle that ensued wasn't easy. It was a test of my resilience, my patience, and my very spirit. But throughout it all, I held on to the belief that truth and justice would prevail. And prevail they did. The court recognized the validity of our prenuptial agreement and the evidence of Alex's betrayal. In the end, the judgment was passed in my favor. I retained full ownership of the business we had built together, along with a fair portion of our shared assets. Additionally, I was granted financial compensation for the emotional distress caused by Alex's actions. It was a bittersweet victory. The business that had once been a symbol of our union and collective effort was now solely mine. The relief of securing my financial and professional future was tempered by the sadness of how our relationship had unraveled. Yet, as I stood outside the courthouse, the final decree in hand, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The fight was over. I had stood up for myself, fought for what was right, and emerged victorious. It wasn't just about the business or the assets, it was about reclaiming my dignity and self-worth. A month had flown by since the court's decision. I was in the middle of reviewing some new contracts when my phone rang. The caller ID flashed Alex's name, a name I hadn't seen or thought about in weeks. Hesitating for just a moment, curiosity got the better of me, and I answered. "Hey, Melissa, it's me." Alex's voice came through, laced with a kind of forced cheerfulness. "I've been thinking about us, about everything that happened. I'm really sorry, you know? I messed up big time. I messed up big time." I couldn't help but let out a short, incredulous laugh. "You're sorry? Now? After everything?" "Yeah, I know it's late, but, listen, I'm in a bit of a tough spot right now," he continued, his voice taking on a desperate edge. "The thing with, it didn't work out. And I'm struggling to find a job. I was hoping, maybe you could help me out? Give me a job at the company?" His audacity left me speechless for a moment. The man who had betrayed me, who had threatened to take everything from me, was now asking for a favor. It was almost laughable. "Alex, let me get this straight," I said, my voice calm but firm. "You cheat, you lie, you try to drag me through the mud, and now you want me to give you a job? You've got some nerve." I know, it sounds bad, but I'm really in a bind here," he pleaded. "I'll take anything, really. I just need a chance to get back on my feet." I took a deep breath, feeling a sense of clarity and resolve wash over me. "Alex, the answer is no. I've moved on. The company is doing great, better than ever, actually. And that's without you. I suggest you do the same, move on." There was silence on the other end of the line for a few moments. "So, that's it, then? You're just going to leave me hanging? Goodbye, Alex." I ended the call and, without a second thought, blocked his number. It was a symbolic gesture, but an important one. I was closing that chapter of my life for good. In the weeks and months that followed, I poured my energy into the company. Sales were up, we were breaking into new markets, and I had signed several lucrative contracts with new partners. The business was thriving, and so was I. Looking back, I realized that Alex's betrayal, while devastating, had been a catalyst for change. It forced me to reevaluate my life, my values, and my ambitions. I emerged from that tumultuous period not as a victim, but as a victor, fully in control of my destiny.